Alright, what's up Dragon Brood? Today we're continuing our series of videos taking a look at those free starter decks you got in Arena and how can we make them better, because some of you really like some of these decks and you're probably getting trounced on the ladder. We're going to do our best to upgrade them on a budget so you don't have to spend a lot or blow up a bunch of wild cards to make them better. Today we're going to look at the Rakdos Sacrifice build and see what we can do with that. So let's go take a look at Ignite the Forge and see if we can make it a little better for you. Alright, as we've shown previously in this series, that this is mostly going to be for people who are either, I guess if you're still watching, are interested in building up a new deck so you can actually have a second or third option to play on Arena, or you're new to the game and you may not even understand what makes each deck good or bad, but you want to build it up and make it more competitive. So to that end, we're going to start by explaining the reason we don't want some cards in the list, and then we'll talk about what we're upgrading to and why. So starting at the top, we have Blood Fountain. This card's actually okay in the sense that it makes a blood token, and honestly being able to return 2 creatures from your graveyard to your hands, alright, but it does take some setup and it does cost 4 mana, and it's just likely not the best thing we're going to play, so there's a good chance we're going to cut this. Conversely, a card like Experimental Synthesizer is probably something you want more of, partly because it's an artifact that you can sacrifice to many other things in the deck, but it can produce a 2/2 creature, and even by sacrificing it, you get access to another card. And you also get access to one whenever you play it. So this is a way to draw cards while also producing creatures and getting other effects, which is actually super nice. Then we have Voltage Surge. Big fan of this card. We're going to have a ton of artifacts, so you're going to go ahead and max this out. It's a common and can allow you to do 4 damage. Nothing to complain about on this one. Ceremonial Knife, it's just not good. Like, sure, you deal damage to your opponent, you get a token, it gets +1, all that, great, but it honestly just is not good for what we're trying to do. Our way to kill the opponent's going to often involve some other amount of creatures or using our anvils and stuff like that. We don't really need this to try to win. Infernal Grasp, great removal, kills damn near everything. You do lose a couple life, but we have a couple of ways to gain life, so it's not the end of the world. I say we go ahead and just max this one out in the final list. Virus Beetle's also kind of cool because it is an artifact and it makes your opponent discard a card, which is super annoying for them and good for you. So yeah, probably going to max this one out as well. Now I will say I'm a super fan of Voldaren Epicure or Bloodcaster if I'm playing an actual vampires list. But in this list, I don't think it's going to be worth spending our rares to max this out, and I don't think it's worth just playing the one, so we're going to pass on this one. Now Dragonspark Reactor. This is one that I will say I'm not a huge fan of. However, if we're on a budget and we're able to get a lot of artifacts into play, this can function as an additional kill spell and, you know, just a general route to victory as a whole. So I'm going to say go ahead and play a couple of them that are already here. I'm not sure I would play more, but I think what we have is fine. Also, we have Sekinzen Smelter, which I think this card's great too. For 1 mana, you can turn any of those blood tokens and things you've been making into 3/1 creatures, and they also have haste. So you can be a real nuisance with this card just by itself and force the opponent to have to deal with it. I would probably max out the Smelter since they're just uncommon, and playing one more is totally okay. Blood Tithe Harvester, if you spend any amount of time on the standard ladder, you'll know that this card is very viable in a lot of lists. For several reasons, but being able to produce a blood token, awesome. But being able to sacrifice this and kill bigger things, considering we have multiple things that make blood tokens, is also great. But it is just a 3/2 attacker for 2 mana if you decide to keep it and fight with it. So nothing wrong with this card. Definitely max it out. It's just an uncommon. Same thing here with Oni Cult Anvil. Now this has a couple of things going for it. Is one, you sacrifice an artifact, you will get to cause your opponent to lose a life, you gain a life. Already good. But on your turn, if you sacrifice an artifact, you produce an additional 1/1 construct. And yes, this does create a cycle that you can just sacrifice a construct on your turn, replace it, make another 1/1, drain your opponent. So all totally viable things you can do. Obviously, you can see where this pattern goes whenever you have stuff like the Sekinzen Smelter. You know, you can sacrifice stuff to the Voltage Surge, and of course, the Anvil itself. So lots of cards working together here. Falcon Wrath Forebear. Oh, I'm dying. All right, we're good now. Also, very reasonable card, but I don't think this is going to be the use we want for this. We're not trying to kill the opponent through just big damage through the air, whatever. That's not going to be our general route to victory, and just 1 copy probably isn't going to serve us well enough, especially if we have other things that want to be able to sacrifice the blood tokens and whatnot. We're not going to have a lot for the Forebear. So I would say probably cut the Forebear, unfortunately. I know we're cutting a rare from the list, but I think it's totally worthwhile. I also do like Professional Facebreaker as a way to be able to sacrifice treasure, to look at extra cards. However, we don't have that many things that really would even produce treasure. So we'd really just be the Facebreaker, and I don't think that's a reason enough to play it. So as much as I feel bad, we are cutting several rares, but this is a deck where the uncommons you're going to add are going to be significantly better for you than the rares. And I know that's tough for people to understand that, well, I have rares and mythics, I want to play them because they fit, but the reality is, though they fit, they're just not as powerful as the uncommons for this particular strategy, which is honestly to your benefit. And then we have stuff like Scrap Welder, which I even forgot this was a Magic card. Not that excited by it. I think we're going to pass on this. Not really what we're looking to do. Circuit Mender, cool. We get to draw cards. That's great. Gain some life. Awesome. But not really what we're trying to do with this list either. I would let this go as well. Searchlight Companion. This is actually fine in the sense that it produces another creature, which is kind of neat, but it's very small, and I don't think that's really what we want to be doing with 3 mana on any turn. Now, we do have 1-hit Sushi, the Blazing Sky, which, again, isn't particularly going to be our route to victory, but I'm willing to leave this one in the deck because of 2 reasons. One, it produces 3 artifacts, which is important when it dies, or if you don't want to produce the 3 artifacts, it does actually let you look at 2 additional cards. I like that too, getting more options. And it flies, so it's hard to block, and it does have trample. So if your opponent does want to block with like a 1/1 or a 2/2 in the air, this can keep getting the damage in. So this one I think we're going to keep, and probably going to end up being the only mythic in the list. Big score, I'm going to have to think about this as we build the final list, because being able to look at extra cards and produce 2 treasure is actually pretty damn good. Don't know if we're going to keep it or not. We'll see. Twin Shot Sniper. I like the fact that we can deal extra damage. I don't know if it's really necessary, and being able to play it as a creature probably isn't good enough for a 4 mana 2/3. If this was something that cared about goblins or archers, maybe there would be an extra benefit, but I don't think this is going to cut it. And honestly, Dollhouse or Horrors, I'm not even 100% sure why this is in the list, because it's not great for this list in general. It almost felt like Wizards just decided we need to include another rare. I think they could have done much better, so we're going to cut this one. Lands we'll talk about in the final list. Okay, so for starters, this list is going to be much cleaner than what we're just looking at. Definitely multiples of a lot of things, and just more ways to kill the opponent. So we are going to go ahead and max out Experimental Synthesizer. I think it's totally worth it. We do also have Voltage Surge, which is great here. Good removal. Same thing with maxing out the Infernal Grasp. I do think, the more I thought about it on Virus Beetle, we do actually have some choices here. Between Virus Beetle, Big Score, and maybe to some extent Dragon Spark Reactor, there are other things you can add. Like Voldaren Epicure, as an example, I think is a card. Whoop, I spelled that wrong. I think this is a card we could include if you wanted to, and fits very good in this list. So here's something to think about. If you already own these because they're commons, or if you just want to craft them, because most people have common wildcards left over, I don't think it would be unreal to replace some number of Virus Beetles and possibly your Big Scores. Now, again, these other cards are good, but I could totally see a reason to cut Big Score and play Epicures, and maybe even cut 1 or 2 Virus Beetle for that. I think the card's very good. Or if you really wanted to, could cut a Smelter, but I just wanted to bring that card to people's attention because I do think it actually fits this list very well. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and make the call for you. I say let's cut Big Scores, let's cut 1 Virus Beetle, and let's go to 3 Epicures. There we go, decision made, I did it for you, we're now playing Epicures. And possibly even find room for a 4th one by cutting 1 Dragon Spark Reactor. However, I know a bunch of you love this card, so I'm going to leave it in the list. So now we've got 4 Experimental Synthesizer, we've got 3 Voldaren Epicure, 4 Voltage Surge, 4 Infernal Grasp. So this is a great way to be able to start your opening hands, and you're almost going to always have something early worthwhile playing. Again, we have the Virus Beetle and 2 Dragon Spark Reactor. We did go ahead and add the 4 Smelter because, again, we can sacrifice Virus Beetle after it's already done its thing. Epicure is going to produce a blood token we can use. Also Synthesizer, we could sacrifice and get a benefit there. So lots of things we could do with the Smelter. Also, the other thing about the Smelter is cool is that you don't have to over-dedicate to the board, and you can just start turning artifacts you have out there into bigger creatures, or just turning them into creatures, period, and then force your opponent to deal with the board, and then you can start laying more cards out. Blood Tithe Harvester, like we talked about, definitely wanted 4. It's great. Oni Cult Anvil, definitely wanted 4. It's great. We're keeping the one at Sushi. So as you can see, we really have not added any rares or mythics to this list. If you look, it's actually kind of surprising. But we are spending 3 mythic wildcards here on Meathook Massacre. This card is absurd. If you don't play this card, you're doing yourself a disservice in this list. It is super good. You're going to have so many creatures and so many things that you can sacrifice and get double damage effectively off of it with things like the Oni Cult Anvil, or even with Sakinzan Smelter, where you can sacrifice one of your artifacts, turn it into a 3/1, and then also drain your opponent with the Meathook Massacre, because you have things that are already artifact creatures that you could sacrifice and turn into things. So lots of cool stuff you can do with this. This is a must play, and it is literally the only rare or mythic in this actual spells that we're adding to the list. But let's take a second and talk about land real quick. We've got 9 Swamp, 9 Mountains, currently have 3 Bloodfell Caves, 1 Haunted Ridge, and 2 Tramway Station. Let me say this. I would go ahead, if you have the resources, build up to playing 4 Haunted Ridge. I think that's an absolute given. I don't think we even question that. I would even try to get Sulphurous Springs in, which is the other red-black land from Dominaria United, and I would work on slowly cutting Bloodfell Caves and Tramway Stations. Once you've cut those, then I would start working my way into cutting a swamp and a mountain till you max out those lands. But I think that's going to be your best bet as you get those resources. You can play the deck as it is now, and it is fine, but I think those will make your deck, your draws, more consistent and allow you just more flexibility in your plays every turn. So you want to max out Haunted Ridge, you want to max out Sulphurous Spring. So just want to put that out there. So as you can see in this list, we actually played a lot of commons and uncommons to help the deck out. And I know it's easy to panic and say, but we cut out the rares. This should be an example that just because a card is rare or mythic, it doesn't mean it's better for the deck. Sometimes you have certain strategies where other cards are just better, and this is a good example of that. Also, if you liked this deck in this video and it helped you out, check out my other video where we show 4 more budget decks that you can play on the standard ladder right now. That's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.